Hello, everyone. This is Attorney General Keith Ellison with Affording Your Life, your podcast about fairness, justice, and consumer information. This is not legal advice, but important information you can use to help you afford your life. Well, welcome to Affording Your Life with Attorney General Keith Ellison. Today, I'm so honored to have Nicole Smith-Holt, who is leading our state and our country in the fight for affordable insulin and drugs that people need to sustain their lives. You know, Nicole, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Well, Nicole, you have a very critical story. It's not a story that's always easy to talk about. Do you mind telling us a little bit about Alex?
Sure. So in 2015, my then 24-year-old son was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. He lived at home. He worked a good job. He was still under my insurance. And at that point, he was still able to afford his insulin. It was expensive, but it was affordable. Even with insurance, he was running about $300 a month out of pocket every time he went to the pharmacy. And that was for insulin and diabetic supplies. Well, in 2017, when he turned 26, he was no longer eligible to stay on my insurance. And what we found through the marketplace for a replacement insurance policy for him was not affordable. It was going to run about $450 a month with a $7,600 deductible. And even with somebody who frequents the pharmacy once a month to buy their diabetic supplies, he still would have been, uninsured basically for 6 months because, to meet that deductible, he wouldn't have had any help from the insurance company until he met that $7,600 deductible. So he opted to save his money and just pay for his insulin and diabetic supplies out of pocket at the pharmacy. Unfortunately, the first time he went to the pharmacy, he miscalculated how much he was going to need to spend that month. And when he was told it was $1,300 for his monthly supply of insulin and diabetic supplies, he didn't have that much in the bank. He had about $1,000. And so he left that pharmacy that day in June without his life-saving medications and did what approximately 1/4 of all type 1s have had to do in their life. He started rationing his medicine. Unbeknownst to me, this was what he was going to do until he could afford that $1,300. I think he was stretching it out until his next payday. Unfortunately, 5 days after he left that pharmacy, his body was discovered by his girlfriend. Alec died of diabetic ketoacidosis as a result of rationing his life-sustaining medications.
Well, just so folks listening can understand everything you shared, if you're over 25 or 30, I'm sure you know what a deductible is. But what that means is that if you get health care insurance, your deductible is the amount that is all on you to pay up until you hit the deductible limit.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's still usually co-pays after that and sometimes out-of-pocket maximums that you have to reach as well.
Yeah.
So sometimes, having insurance is not affordable.
Right. Right.
The premiums are high. And then on top of that, you have to meet that deductible and that out-of-pocket maximum and those additional co-pays every time you pick up your prescription or see your doctor. Those amounts add up. They, it's almost like they're they're preying upon us, you know? And when you're 25, 26, 27 years old, first time venturing out on your own and having to purchase your own policy, it's difficult. I mean, I've been insuring my family for 30-some years, and it's a complex situation when you're, even through your employer, when you're looking at plans and you go to choose your plan that you pick even through your employer. They're complex.
They're complicated. I mean, anybody who's had to figure it out knows that. For a 26-year-old who's just kind of facing the world, it's particularly a daunting thing. And ketoacidosis, just so people know, when you are a diabetic, you take the insulin because if you don't take it, your blood essentially will kind of acidify.
Yeah, it turns to acid and it starts, destroying your internal organs.
Right.
And a lot of times, people ask me all the time, well, why didn't he call 911 or why didn't he go to the emergency room or why didn't he call you? One of the first organs in your body that's affected by the ketoacidosis, the acid within your blood system, is your brain.
Right.
It makes you confused and disoriented,
Right.
and you're unable to make decisions.
That's
so
right.
that doesn't surprise me that he did not reach out for help.
Well, just to keep this totally real, when I sat down with you at this table in my office today, you shared with me something that was pretty sobering.
Yeah. There's been another death in Minnesota.
Right.
Another young man, 21 years old, working 2 jobs. His body was found on the 28th of June from the same thing that Alec passed away from.
Mm-hmm.
It's a crisis in America right now.
It is a crisis. It is a crisis.
It's the amount of money that they're expecting people to pay per month to stay alive is criminal. I don't know that many people that can easily afford the price tag that they're asking.
And, the price tag is outrageous, but if we can talk about how insulin was discovered,
Yeah.
you know the story.
Yeah, and actually I was just in London, Ontario 2 weeks ago, the birthplace of insulin. I
Right.
toured the Banting House with a group of Minnesotans and people from Wisconsin and Illinois and Michigan and Indiana.
Right.
We went on a caravan to buy affordable insulin in Canada. And on that trip, we spent some time at the Banting House, the home of insulin. It was discovered by a couple great men,
Yeah.
and then given away to the University of Toronto.
Right.
They did not want their name on the patent because they felt as if it was a gift to the world.
That's absolutely right.
Yeah, and so it was given. They actually did receive $1 each for their discovery.
A Canadian
dollar.
Right.
100 years ago, so we can imagine how much that dollar was worth. And they actually won a Pulitzer or a Nobel Peace Prize
Sure.
for their discovery.
As they should.
Prior to that, it was a certain death sentence.
Right.
They had wards in hospitals that were specific for people who had type 1. Typically, at that time, it was children. And so they would have wards set up for little kids who would lay in bed all day and just wait to die.
Sure.
They were starved. That prolonged the dying process, but it was a horrific and painful way to go.
Yeah. And somehow Eli Lilly got involved. Is that right?
So the University of Toronto said that they didn't have the capability to mass produce the product. So Eli Lilly swooped in and says, oh, hey, we can do that for you. And from there on, they have been hand over fist making a lot of money off of this.
They essentially monetized something that was produced and invented for the public good and have profiteered off of it. But it's gotten particularly bad in the last 20 years. Is that right?
Yeah. So in 1996, when Eli Lilly introduced Humalog, which is an analog, a fast-acting insulin, it made the lives of every type 1 diabetic who was using Humalog much more easily managed. And over the past, since 1996, the price of it has increased 1,200%.
1,200%.
There's been no changes to their formula. They cannot use R&D as a justification for those price because we haven't seen any new developments.
Basically, they're saying, we have it, you need it, pay me.
Right. Yeah.
That's essentially what they're saying.
And isn't that what the mob does
Right.
and drug cartels and
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when you think about the way it was discovered? Because actually it wasn't invented because it comes from,
Right.
you know.
At that time, it was an animal product.
Right.
So
Yeah,
it
yeah,
did
yeah.
go from an animal product to a human hormone that
Right.
was extracted from humans to now chemically engineered
Sure,
analog. So there has been 3 different versions of it,
But it's still the same
but it's
concept.
still the same concept.
And the original version of it was invented in the public interest.
Yes.
And I can't think of why somebody would try to profiteer so outrageously from it, but they have done so. Let me just ask you this: what you've been doing a lot on this front? What's that T-shirt you're wearing right there?
Affordable Insulin Now T-shirt.
That's right. And you guys got a hashtag.
We have a hashtag Minnesota Insulin for All or hashtag Insulin for All.
Mm-hmm. How could people join you?
You know, they can check out our Facebook page, Minnesota Insulin for All, or go to the overall advocacy page, which is T1 International.
Right. And you just kind of mentioned that you were in Canada. Is Canada charging folks, like the United States for insulin?
No. Actually, you know, we kind of felt like we were robbing them blind when we left. We've done 2 recent caravans to Canada. The first one was in May, and we went up through Minnesota, and we went to St. Francis.
Mm-hmm. Like up to Manitoba?
Yeah, and I think it's Ontario.
Okay.
And then the second one was just in London, Ontario, where we went through, you know, all the 5 states to get there. It was a 16-hour bus ride, but it was absolutely
Through
worth
Detroit?
it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I bought a vial of insulin there, the same product that Alec used.
Yeah.
Here, it's about $340. And in Canada, that same vial of insulin that is manufactured by Eli Lilly in the same warehouse that all of the other insulin gets manufactured, just slightly packaged a little bit different. It was under $30.
So 10% of what it is here.
Yeah. So the group of us, everybody that went, spent roughly $2,000 in US dollars to buy a massive amount of insulin. We saved $20,000.
Incredible. It's just, there's just no way to justify what these companies, but it's not just Eli Lilly, it's also Novo Nordisk.
And Sanofi.
But you know, the thing about some of the, Novo Nordisk is actually a European company.
Yeah. So Eli Lilly is the only U.S.-based insulin manufacturing company. There's only 3 that sell 96% of the world's insulin.
Right.
And Eli Lilly is the only U.S.-based one.
But even the foreign ones that come here sell it at the premium price, right?
They do. You know, the 3 companies over the past 20 years have raised their prices in lockstep at the same time, at the same rate, and they are charging the equivalent for all 3 products.
Well, you know, as the Minnesota Attorney General, I have a responsibility to make sure that anti-competitive practices like illegal price fixing don't occur.
Right.
And we're suing a whole bunch of generic drug manufacturers for just that right now.
Yeah.
It's not legal for companies to collaborate, collude, and not compete on price.
Yep. So we're looking forward to you taking the charge on this and doing what you have the authority to do.
Yeah. Well, we actually have one insulin lawsuit we've already filed.
Yep.
We're going after them on that. And we're looking for more than one way to try to knock these prices down. One of the ways is we have a drug pricing task force, and you're the co-chair of it.
Yes, I am.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
So I'm super happy you agreed to do that. Tell me what motivated you to take on that challenge.
Well, what pharmaceutical companies are doing in the United States is just wrong. It's criminal. It's costing people lives.
Right.
On average, we lose about 50,000 U.S. citizens per year because they can't afford their medications or their health care.
It's shocking that they don't seem to be bothered by that.
No, because they know that, you know, behind every body lost, there's 2 more that are going to be needing their services.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. It's shocking. You've already chaired several meetings. Your co-chair is Senator Jensen.
Yeah.
And you and Senator Jensen have had some spirited exchanges at our meetings.
Yeah, we have.
Yeah. We're going to have them on this show, but one of the things that I would hope you would share with our listeners is, sort of what is your perspective on the emergency insulin bill that was before the state legislature?
I think that
So basically, what would the bill have done?
Yeah,
And then
so
what
the
was it?
Alex Smith emergency insulin bill would have been a safety net for people who live in Minnesota who are insulin dependent.
Right.
With the rising cost of insulin, not everybody is able to afford it, like my son and like Jesse and like countless number other people in Minnesota. This would have been a safety net to provide free or very, very low cost insulin to somebody who's found themselves in an emergency situation like Alec,
Right.
Without insurance because of aging off of my plan, or somebody who lost a job, or somebody who's going through a divorce and no longer has coverage.
Sure.
There's countless numbers of reasons. Somebody who has a high deductible plan and their furnace went out or their car broke down, and now they can't get that fixed because they have to afford their insulin. So it would have been a safety net to provide them with at least a 3-month supply of insulin to tide them over while they search for a long-term solution.
Right.
We never intended for it to be something that was a long-term solution. It's not going to lower the price of insulin. There's other bills that we'll be working on for that aspect. But it was a safety net to prevent an unfortunate death.
Mm-hmm. And it didn't pass.
Did not pass.
Do you know
In the
why?
final minutes of the session, special session,
Right.
It just disappeared. My personal opinion on that is, Novo Nordisk was brought in as a lobbyist. I think that they swayed the votes at the last minute, unfortunately. Money talks these days.
Doesn't it? I mean, the thing about that kind of concerns me is that, Novo Nordisk and all the rest of them, they're not making, most companies would be pretty happy with a 5 to 7% rate of return. They look at that as chump change. Yeah. And they're like, look, why should we do that when we could mark up 300-400%?
Right.
And they don't seem to be bothered by the fact that people are losing their lives. You wonder, it's impossible. I don't want to blame anybody for Jesse's passing other than the pharmaceutical companies, but, if we would have been able to pass an emergency measure to get people some emergency insulin, you never know. You don't know what would happen.
Right.
And you don't know who's suffering right here, right now.
Right. And we knew and we told these legislators that this bill will save lives. And we have shown that recently, that with the implementation of the Alex Smith Emergency Insulin Act, would have saved lives. It very well possibly could have saved Jesse's life.
Well, look, I think that no doubt about it, you have made an important contribution to the fight for affordable insulin. And you are talking to policymakers. They know you. They're listening to you. You are standing there dealing with them. And I just want to say thank you for that. It's really tremendous. You, your husband, your other friends, and folks who've been part of the effort. What do you want people to know?
That we are fighting, that we're not backing down. I think that a lot of people would have been discouraged by the outcome of the last legislative session and maybe taken a break and regrouped. We took our break and we regrouped and we doubled in size and we doubled in power.
That's right.
And we are coming back twice as strong, and we won't stop until this bill is in place. And we're going to push forward with additional bills.
Well, we're going to be there with you. Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you.
Thanks for doing all the things that you're doing, and thanks for co-chairing our committee. Thanks for coming to every listening session, and just so honored to have you on the first episode of Affording Your Life with Attorney General Keith Ellison.
Well, thank you.
Well, hey, everybody. This is Attorney General Keith Ellison with Affording Your Life, the show about fairness, justice, and consumer information. We're not distributing legal advice here. If you have a legal problem, either call us or contact an attorney. But check in and see us next time on Affording Your Life with Attorney General Keith Ellison. Thank you very much.